What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's dive into the mailbag at John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. DMs wide open. Fire in them. It's just my Instagram. DM me and get your question answered here on the show. I see this video from Belichick is going viral. Everyone is just, let the man live. He's 73, 74 years old. He's got a 25-year-old girlfriend who wears hooker boots. And just let him have a good time. You know, Bill's on campus. Everyone's just trying to cut the dude's wings. Let my man live. Okay, let's dive into the mailbag. Got a question for the bag. Some of my local radio guys brought this up the other day in regards to Travis Hunter. He's considered a consensus top 5 pick, and I'm not sure why. Hear me out. Most are saying it's going to be impossible for him to play both sides of the ball. If that's the case, they are drafting him to be a DB or a wide receiver exclusively and not both. Well, if you're drafting solely for those positions, I'm not sure he's the best at either one. For DBs, I'd argue it's Will Johnson out of Michigan, and for wide receivers, I'd argue it's McMillan out of Arizona. He's a higher prospect score, both because he's an awesome player, but it's mostly because of his versatility and ability to do both. I don't think he's better than either of them at those positions exclusively. It's almost everyone is saying he can't do both. I think I would rather have Travis Hunter on my team than the Arizona wide receiver. I think part of it, you're not going into this draft when you take him of like, he has to do this. Now, maybe this team leans like, I want him to play corner, I want him to play wide receiver, but he can end up doing either. He is just a better player. If you gave 10 college football teams, would you rather have Travis Hunter or would you rather have either of the other two guys? They would take Travis Hunter. And then you just figure it out. I think that's part of it. Like, I think we're so set on having a decision what he's going to do. Let it just play out. Let it just play out. He is I think he's a pretty special talent. And I think part of like what makes him so intriguing as a DB is like he'll tackle. So I would take Travis Hunter over either one of those players. Now, you are right that if you go, the risk would be you're in a couple years, he can't quite find his footing at either one, but he's dabbling in both, and you kind of get past, right? Because it's like, I don't care what you do in life. If you are spread thin, it's harder to improve. Right? So, like, how does, let's use an example, Derek Stingley get a lot better at corner? Well, every single day since he's been in the league, everything he does revolves around playing defensive back. The meetings, the training, practice, the games, it's 100% playing cornerback, right? How has Jamar Chase gotten better over the last 5 years? Every single day is about playing wideout, running routes, catching the ball. You spread yourself thin. Like, if I try to do 7 other things beside podcasting would get shittier. This show would get worse, right? So it's like that is a concern. Though I think you just kind of let the cream rise and then focus. If he's able to play both, it'd be one of the greatest stories of all time. I mean, it really would. I'm skeptical, but I would have been skeptical that he could have pulled off what he pulled off. Now, could he have done it in the SEC? I don't know. It would have been more difficult. I mean, he could have, but would he have had the same success? Maybe. Do you think the saga with Nico and Tennessee will have a ripple effect on college football in the current state of the NIL? I was talking to someone who had interviewed for GM jobs. I think, when would it have been? I think it would have been a couple months ago. I almost said last year, but I actually think it was like in December. And he said by far the worst time to be a college GM has been the previous 6 months and the next 6 months, because there are no rules. And eventually they think, I don't know the exact date, but over the course of the next calendar year, the revenue sharing will be set. So right now you're dealing with everyone that was going to try to be double dipping. And having these situations. It has reached a boiling point of like there are no rules, there are no regulations, everyone's cheating, no one's getting in any trouble. So this is a very, very difficult time to be in that position. So I do believe once the revenue sharing gets figured out, that things will stabilize a little. I still think it's going to be pretty complicated. That if like, okay, you got a salary cap, is it like the NFL? Do the quarterbacks get more? Do the left tackles get more? Because in college football, like, why should my left tackle get more if he's not an NFL left tackle? And my middle linebacker is going to be the 13th, 17th overall pick. I have Roquan Smith, right? Because college, unlike the NFL, it's like, okay, this guy's a really good player at right guard. I'm going to pay him, right? But like, what if, in college football, the best player in your team is like Quentin Nelson? It's like that guy makes less than the quarterback. That's where it's going to be complicated. I would imagine they're working on that right now, but be interesting to see how that plays out. Question for the mailbag: which Group of Five school since 2000 do you believe would have had the best chance to win a national championship with the current playoff bracket? Uh, i.e., Kellen Moore era at Boise or 2021 Cincinnati Wildcats? I would say the Kellen Moore team at Boise would have destroyed the Cincinnati team. You can't. I mean, Desmond Ritter. I think Boise's a 10-point favorite in that game, and I do think it would be difficult unless you got the bye. I don't think a non-power four team could win 4 games. Do what Ohio State just did, or Notre Dame attempted to do. I think it'd be really, really difficult. I don't think either one could. Well, I think we saw. I forget who did Cincinnati play. I watched them in a bowl game and they got destroyed. So definitely not them. The NBA 82 game grind is done. And now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here and it's time for the high stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw dropping plays. Can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through the finals. Now, the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been your go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will Curry drop 30? Will LeBron drop 40? Or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make the playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. South Carolina Gamecock fan. And Spencer Rattler was really good when he played for us, and I want to see the Gamecocks do good. With all of Derek Carr talk about being hurt this season, I think that's complete BS. I think Albert Breer put out something today. I saw it on Pro Football Talk that some of it is in regards to he wants a trade. He's not happy with Kellen Moore. Derek Carr is not going to get a shoulder surgery and be out for the year. I do not believe that for a second. I'm not quite sure what's going on with him and the Saints. I mean, they're paying him $40 million. But I think that my guess is Derek Carr is their starting quarterback. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would be a little shocked if he's not. I don't think Spencer Rattler's that good. I know he had a good year for you guys, but I'm not sure he's an NFL starting quarterback, which you transition to become a backup and be a good player. But I don't know. I don't see that one. Question for the pod, a little something fun for the offseason. If you and your future kids were lucky enough to be great athletes, if your future kids were lucky enough to be great athletes, what would you prefer to be a dad of? Super Bowl winning quarterback, Hall of Fame hard hitting dominant linebacker or defensive player, major Masters winning golfer, Olympic winning sprinter, world champion UFC fighter, Hall of Fame NBA player? That's a good question. Is if I'm just rooting for their financial success, if you're a Hall of Fame NBA player, you are basically a lock to be worth minimum 400 plus $1 million. If you have just a even if you got hurt, like you're 10 or 11, like you are going to make so much money. So, in terms of setting up my child financially for his all children, financially, that is number one choice. You could be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and Nick Foles ended up making a lot of money, but it doesn't guarantee that you're like the top quarterback. It could just be the circumstance, though you become a pretty legendary figure there. Winning sprinter, no chance. World champion UFC fighter, no chance. Because really, like, there's a small few of like even the champions that have made huge money and become stars. Like to me, Connor's a little bit of an outlier. For me, selfishly, golfer. Because if you're a Masters winning golfer, you're just gonna be rich, and you're gonna have access to all these courses, which gives you want to play with your dad. Now, you could argue as a quarterback or an NBA Hall of Famer, you probably would get similar opportunities. So it would be one of those three. If I was just rooting for his financial success, Hall of Fame NBA player would have to be number one. I think in terms of to win the Masters or the Super Bowl would be cooler than being a Hall of Fame NBA player, though you might not be as rich. But maybe I don't care about my son's financial outlook. Obviously, he's not hurting if he accomplishes that. So I don't, it would be one of those three. My kid's never playing in the NBA, and more than likely is not only never playing in the NFL, definitely not a quarterback. So I would say the thing that has the best opportunity, UFC fighter, no chance. Sprinter, absolutely none. We run flat footed in my family, but bad foot athlete, not very fast. Golf's our only opportunity. What are the Chiefs' biggest glaring draft needs? Well, offensive line. You lose Joe Thuney, though I think the guy you drafted from BYU that you started at left tackle, they're going to put at guard. You sign the dude from the Niners, but he's a backup, though he can be a starter, I think. But how good can he be? I don't know. Now, can he end up playing left and right tackle? I think it's just offensive line. To me, that offensive line. I also think this is a pretty good tight end draft. Could you take a tight end to fill in Kelsey's shoes? Because that is a position that is very conducive for good quarterbacks. I mean, Lamar Jackson has good tight ends, right? Josh Allen, what did they do a couple years ago? They drafted a tight end in the first round. Now we'll see if Kincaid how good he turns out, and they got Dawson Knox. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, with Tyreek leaving, I mean, the guy that he's going to be most synonymous with when his career, at least the first half of his career, is Travis Kelsey. So tight end is quarterback's best friend. You think about great quarterbacks too. Tom Brady, Gronkowski, Peyton Manning, Dallas Clark, and then when he went to the who was his tight end with the Denver Broncos, former basketball player, Julius Thomas. You have Elway, Shannon Sharp, Steve Young, Brent Jones, Favre, Chamora. Rogers always had good guys, so it's kind of an important position. I would say tight end. In theory, Rashee Rice healthy. You have what's his name, the wide receiver from Texas. You got some skill guys. Draft another running back. To me, it's offense. Big fan of the show. As painful as it is, I'm a lifelong Browns fan. To me, it's painfully obvious they should draft Carter and take a flyer on a guy like Dart or McCord later. But I think there's still a chance they take Shedeur. Since the shit show that was the Watson trade, there seems to be a massive cloud of negativity surrounding them, understandably so. And taking Shedeur seems like it would get the vibes going in the right direction, but I don't think that's the right approach. If they do take him, do you think it's legit football reasons, or do you think they do it to help turn the page? I think I saw a headline today that some anonymous scout said that if Shedeur ends up going in the first round, it's because an owner wants him. I do think if your head coach, who is also your play caller in the Brown situation, I think he's the play caller. They give it up. I can't keep track of Stefanski in the play calling, but offensive mind, head coach, he should more than the GM get the say on the quarterback. If I was a GM in the NFL, in my coach, it's one thing if he's a defensive guy or CEO head coach, but if it's my coach is one of these offensive guys, and obviously Stefanski falls under that category, it's like you need to have full conviction on the quarterback. So if he does not, I would not. If he wants him and thinks he'd be good in the offense, 100%. That's why I think, like, do I think Stefanski wanted Deshaun Watson? I don't. I know that Jimmy Haslam, not that he didn't want him for like $150 million, but once it got out of control, I don't think the Stefanski and the GM wanted. I think it was all the owner. So if they drafted him, I just have a hard time seeing, a weaker arm quarterback, though, like not that they have high expectations, but traded for Kenny Pickett, who doesn't have a great arm. So I don't know. I would be, I doubt it happens. I don't know why. That's just a gut from the outside. I mean, it's hard to, you never know. We get shocked. No one in a million years saw Michael Penix go to the Falcons, but that makes some sense. Penix doesn't have, he actually has a strong arm in terms of he can throw a deep ball, but he doesn't have like Josh Allen, Herbert, just absolute howitzer, but he plays in a dome. It's actually a good, really good spot for him. I don't know if the AFC North, the weather, Shedeur's arm is, on the scale of like really strong and shitty is somewhere kind of in the middle. To me, if you're Shedeur, you would much rather go to like a dome team. You'd much rather go to the Saints. What are the odds Cam Ward is a lesser version of Kyler Murray? Uh, I think part of the Kyler package is that he's really short, right? If Kyler was Cam Ward's size, I think he would be a Pro Bowl level guy. Part of what gives Kyler limitations is hard for him to see. I truly believe that. He is. I mean, Kyler's a remarkable talent, but if you gave him 4 or 5 inches, now I'm not acting like he'd be Lamar Jackson because who knows? Maybe he doesn't quite have the feel, but I think he would be dramatically better. So Kyler is an elite runner and athlete. I don't know if Cam Ward is that. Now Cam's got a big arm. I think he's a different type player. I think he's much closer to like I'm not comparing him to like the Mahomes, but Watson in Houston, like kind of a move around, make plays. He's a lot different than Kyler. Was wondering what your thoughts are on moving the draft too early to mid-April. It feels like it's been dragging on now for too long. A lot of coverage is becoming very boring and stale. Do you think it would be a good idea to move it earlier? I've never really thought about it, but if you move it earlier, then what are we talking about right now? And let's say it was a week ago. Like, what are we talking about now? So it's like, I think you can play that game till you're blue in the face. Should we move this so we can talk about it? It's like the draft talk always gets stale if there aren't a loaded quarterback class. You're only as strong as your quarterbacks, and this doesn't have a strong quarterback class. Plus, I just think in general, draft talk always gets kind of boring by April. We've been talking about these guys now with the explosion of college football for 6 months. What else are we going to say? They haven't played a game in almost half a year. I mean, some of these guys haven't played a game since like early December. So you're thinking January, February, March, April, and if all of December. Some of these guys are 4.5, 5 months away from actually putting on pads. Think about that. I guess some of them played in the Senior Bowl, but question for the pod. I know you aren't a huge fan of spring leagues, but do you see any value in a developmental league for the NFL? I was watching the UFL this weekend to scratch my football itch and can't help but notice a number of NFL guys. Kellen Mond, Damon Arnett, and a bunch of random dudes that had stints. It makes me wonder if Trey Lance's career would have went different if he got valuable reps early in his tenure to be a better equipped for the NFL. Coaching wouldn't be an issue either, since Ken Wisenhunt, Mike Nolan, Wade Phillips. I think the problem is, I hear you, but like, let's say I draft a project in like the third or fourth round. I'm not giving him to that league in the spring. What if someone shatters his leg? I'm going to try to develop him. The problem is with the CBA, it's hard to develop guys. But if I was the team, if I owned the team or I was the coach or the GM, I would never allow that player to go play in this league because what if he tears ACL? What if he gets injured? Like the ROI is like, yeah, he can improve. Well, what offense are they running? Plus, the owners are never going to pay for the league. Why would they? They don't have to. College football does that for them. So, like you listed some of these guys, they're trying to keep their career going. Uh, I just I hear what you're saying about Trey Lance, and I think a lot of guys would benefit from being able to do that, but it's never going to be available. This isn't, in basketball, it's easy. It's like I can draft a guy 10th overall and I just send him to the G League. I think he's just playing basketball. The likelihood of, or the minors in baseball. Football's not like that. And I just can't take the risk of you shattering your shoulder because you're my second round pick, but you're not ready. I need you to get more reps. And then all of a sudden you have a major injury and then there is no development. It ends up being a step back. So I hear what you're saying. Uh, okay, it's like, and also just because Mike Nolan and Wade Phillips, I think what you do is you scout that league, and maybe some of those teams are running some similar concepts, and you see a guy that you kind of like and you sign him. But I don't think you'd ever give your guy to them. 49er for life. Question: What do we get? What do we got to do to get Trevor Lawrence? Feels like Kyle, compared to his dad, never truly had his quarterback. Trevor kind of been on life support, playing hero ball for the perennial shitty Jaguars. And paying Purdy will be a mistake. We're in transition, haven't paid for a quarterback, and it's before the draft. Honestly, blow this bleep up. I think a quarterback like Trevor can elevate a mediocre supporting cast. I'm out. I'm out, dog. Not that he can't be a solid player, but he's under a contract that pays him $200 million guaranteed. I would not trade for the player. Uh, if I ever acquired the player, it'd have to be for really, really cheap. And given how much he makes, that's not possible. I also think like the difference of him and Purdy. I know Purdy. There is no one has ever questioned ever how much football is his life. Obviously, Brock his newly he's newly married and faith are a big part of his life. But when you think Brock Purdy, you think God family football. When I think Trevor Lawrence, like, is he all in? I don't know. I mean, came out before the draft. Like, football's not everything. I'm sorry, that's a red flag to me. I'm out. I just am. And listen, it's not all his fault. The organization is chaotic, but he has been extremely underwhelming given the hype. Where Purdy has, I think Kobe Bryant said this one time, like, what would you want to be remembered as? Like a talented overachiever. Like I want more. Like some of the best players in the league are also overachievers. Like T.J. Watt, Fred Warner, Travis Kelsey. Like I like my talent to be overachievers. Like it feels like Trevor's an underachiever. Now, if I can acquire him in a couple years for nothing, then yeah, I'm interested. But one, they wouldn't trade him, and if they did, you'd have to blow them away, and it's not worth the risk given how much money he makes. I'd rather have Purdy, which is a problem because Purdy would go, I've been better than him, and look how much money he got. I want that. Which, in fairness to him and his agent, like they're not wrong. Panthers fan. During a rebuild with a young quarterback, how heavy do you weigh the draft decisions on offense versus defense? If you go offense, you give Bryce more weapons to see full potential. If you go defense, you're trying to not put as much pressure on him. I guess the question is, should you surround a young quarterback with as much offensive talent as possible or build the overall team and see if the young quarterback has what it takes? I don't think there's a right answer on this because a great defense helps out your offense. But as a young quarterback, if you don't have pieces around you, remember a couple years ago, your talent on the team was awful, but our offense was really bad. Well, last year you made some moves for the offensive line. The offensive line, especially up the middle, is good. You add Xavier Legette, he's a talented player. Uh, what pick are you guys drafting? Like ninth or 10th? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. You've drafted a left tackle pretty recently. In that, what's the guy's name from NC State? I'll be honest, I can't really tell you how he's played, or you know better than me. But I'm trying to see what pick that you guys have. Eighth. I think you can do whatever you want. If you take a defensive lineman, won't blame you, right? And that would be my guess. It's really, really hard to function. If you do go offense, your offense going to be your defensive roster is not good. So there is a lot of pressure on the defense to just be serviceable. Now you could also say we'll see on the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, I'm a Penix guy, but that organization always lets you down. The Bucks are clearly good on offense, and the Saints, who knows? Uh, I don't have a great answer for you. I would lean probably defensive lineman. I think you're better off taking a defensive lineman there and taking a skill guy in the second round. That would be what I would be inclined to do. I would take the best defensive lineman at pick 8, and then I would take the best running back, the best tight end, the best wide receiver, whatever in the second round. That's how I'd be thinking. Potentially defense too. I don't know, but I would I. This is where GMs tell you you can't draft for need. So whatever your board says, who's the best player that's on the board at pick 8? Whoever goes 1 through 7, whoever is your top graded player, take that. And then if all things are equal, lean line over, I would say, a wide receiver. Because there's not a wide receiver at 8 that's good enough in this draft, in my opinion. What's your take or assessment on the late, great Steve McNair? He doesn't get talked about much, but in his prime, he was a top 5 quarterback, Hall of Fame. This is a hard one because I would say in his prime of his career, I was in like junior high in high school. So I didn't quite watch, especially him specifically, uh, relative to how I would now if he had played over the last 15, 20 years. I would say this. I do remember like him against the Raiders, him against the Ravens. When I think Steve McNair, the first thing I think about is toughness. Like he had to be pound for pound one of the tougher players in the league. I do not think it's random that when he left the Titans, the Ravens signed him. And when you think about the type guys the Ravens sign, like typically tough guys, like when and Ozzie Newsome's thing always was like, we like guys that in our world play like a Raven outside of the building, and when they become available, we try to acquire them. Anquan Bolden, Steve Smith Sr., uh, Calais Campbell. Part of it is like in Steve McNair's time, he played against Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, two of the best quarterbacks of all time. Favre was still around. I don't know if he's quite a Hall of Famer, but my standards for Hall of Fame. But he was a badass. I mean, Steve McNair was sweet, and like I said, got to be one of the pound for pound tougher players in his generation. Any position, linebackers, linemen, you name it. That is a tough. You know what? Been listening to this. Enjoy the show. I need to accept the NIL. I know we need to accept the NIL, and I agree. There needs to be some sort of compensation with how much revenue the athletes generate. But one thing I never hear is how it affects the fans. Not knowing from year to year who will be on the team is frustrating and makes me wane a bit. Also, why do most media personalities always blame the system when a player gets greedy? Nico, the player is never held accountable. Well, a lot of former players, I would say, are on quote unquote these shows, and a lot of media is just anti-establishment. So they all are very predictable. It's why I don't consume most of them because you can give me every topic and I already know their opinion before I even press play. I would say no one gets more disrespected in the grand scheme of things in the business of sports than the fans. The media are constantly talking shit to you. Uh, the former players always act like pay everybody, pay everybody, pay everybody. And this is I'm not necessarily talking about college, but I hear you. The most important people of this entire business are the fans. All this money, all of it, is because of them. And sometimes if I remember saying that on Twitter one time like 5 years ago, and a bunch of people were like, no, it's because of the TV networks. Well, no shit. Why do you think they're willing to pay? Because people watch. But I think the faster you realize that, you know, the media, one, that they're, I would say, understanding of business. And I'm generalizing here, some understand, but for the most part, and I've been around some of these guys, and a lot of them actually, they have no comprehension of how the world works. They can feel a little out of touch when it comes to business for a group that covers a business. And I think there's a difference of like, yeah, the NCAA sucks. Everyone's been saying that forever. And like these players are getting scammed. And listen, I like Jay Billis, but he said the same thing for 20 years when all the top players in college basketball in the internet era were getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, instead of getting 400 grand under the table, could they have been worth millions? Yeah, but he acted like no one got any money. It was just it was just bullshit. It was just not true. And he knew it. Fuck, his program was paying him, which again, I don't care. Pay whoever you want. But we can't pretend these guys weren't getting broken off. Even Colin mentioned it the other day. Why did we act forever like these kids weren't getting taken care of? Nico's making $2.5 million. He threw one touchdown against Florida, Bama, Georgia, Arkansas, and Ohio State. One total touchdown. One. It's fucking embarrassing. The reason you go to Tennessee, the reason you go to Bama, the reason you go to LSU, the reason you go to Georgia, you're going to play Chattanooga State and McNeese State and some random program in September. But how about when the lights get bright and Kirby and his squad rolls through, or Ryan Day and his squad rolls through, or Alabama shows up? And I know they beat Alabama. It was just one touchdown he threw. But it's like, bro, I'm going to need a little bit more. Can we get some fucking touchdown throws? I mean, it's part of your negotiating ploy. I'd argue he was overpaid based on his performance. They expected more. The reason they were in the playoffs was not Nico. I don't think anyone would debate that. I don't care what was the team that they beat like 70-10. No one gives a shit about that game. Nobody. It doesn't matter. What'd you look like against Georgia, Florida, Ohio State? You lost to Arkansas. So I just think that all for paying these guys, but not everyone is always getting screwed. I just think that's their first reaction. You turn on some of these shows, everyone's constantly getting fucked. BS. What about the guy that's screwing you? Like, Tennessee might have been like, can we get a rebate? Do you notice that? You never get your money back. The Suns don't get their money back from Bradley Beal, who tried less hard than I've ever seen any professional athlete of any game I've ever been to. It was an eye-opening experience. This is what you get for $50 million. There has never been a business deal with anyone else where you've got less in return than the people that have paid Bradley Beal over the last several years. I mean, but no one will ever talk about, like, yeah, should he give like half his money back? Like, because in most of our industries, if you have a dispute, like you go to court and you start arguing over, like, yeah, this is not worth that. I got screwed here. Never happens that way. No one goes, hey, Nico, that $4 million we paid you for the last 2 years, can we get two of those back now that you're leaving? Because we didn't think you lived up to the hype. You couldn't pay anyone on television to say that. Yet that's how the fans think. I think the faster when you realize as a fan that most, especially the traditional media, they kind of hate you. They really do. They don't really like you. They look down upon you. And the faster you realize it, the easier it is to turn off their shit. Why so many of them are holding on for dear life.